In addition to learning from one another, I think that these conferences also have the opportunity to find new heroes, people to get that much more inspired about the work that they do in the paths that they've chosen. And I'm pleased to get to introduce a new hero of mine in just speaking to her a little bit, Liz Huntley. She's a committed child advocate, and a passionate litigation attorney. I mean, she came to this in a little bit different way, that she's had a significant, I think 17 years, corporate defense litigation practice, but then she spent a lot of time not billing hours, but consulting with families, with governmental agencies, with others to recognize the importance of early childhood education. And she's here today to remind us how important early learning and the investment that we can make in it is. So please join me in welcoming Liz up the stage.
Nice to meet you. I tell you, I feel like my IQ just dropped. I'm in the room with all these outstanding educators and policy people to talk about something that you all are experts about. And I'm certainly not going to give you any data, research, or literature. What I come today to tell you is a personal story about why I'm so passionate about early childhood education and its impact. I know about it firsthand because you see, both of my parents were drug dealers. My mom and dad were drug dealers. We lived in the housing projects in Huntsville, Alabama, Butler Terrace housing projects, one of the most violent places in the Southeast. And in that home, I lived with my other siblings. There were 5 of us, and we had 4 different fathers. My mother had given birth to us from age 16 to age 21. Now, they decided they were going to be heroin dealers and have all of us in that home as they did so. And you know what's ironic for you early childhood people in the room, you know, dysfunction is pretty relative. It's from the eyes of the beholder. And in that home, even though I had the 5 different siblings from 4 different daddies, they were just my brothers and sisters. You know, even though we lived in a housing project, my mom and dad were in the house. It didn't matter to me that they weren't married. And we had all the toys and stuff that we could ever want. And I didn't appreciate the fact that it was from drug dealing money. Had no clue until I was 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, my dad, as would happen when you're dealing drugs, got busted for dealing drugs and went to prison. And when he went to prison, my mom tried to hold down the drug business on her own and broke the cardinal rule of drug dealing, and she became a heroin addict. And one day, for reasons unknown to me to this day, my mother took the 5 of us, packed up our clothes, took us to different relatives' homes, 3 different sets of relatives, divided us up 3 ways. She went back to that housing project and she took out a gun and committed suicide. So that was a lot to deal with because my little reality had no idea that I was in such dysfunction until we learned that she had committed suicide. And through adults talking, saying things like, I can't believe she did that to those children. I can't believe she started using drugs. I can't believe Willie's in jail and not taking care of those kids. That's how I pieced together what my reality was because nobody really sat down and explained it to me. And if that wasn't enough to go through, within a month of moving into my grandmother's home with my younger sister, my paternal grandmother, housing project, poor, my grandmother was a domestic worker, fixed income, just a terrible poverty situation. Within a month of moving in that home, she had other adult children that lived there. My uncle started to sexually abuse me. So at 5 years old, there I stood, mother's committed suicide, dad in and out of prison, not taking care of me, basically an orphan of the state. The relative that I am living with is extremely poor and has her own issues, and there's an uncle in the house that's violating me literally on a regular basis. So it goes without saying that I felt dejected, I felt depressed, I literally couldn't hold my head up and look at people because I felt ashamed, because even though my perpetrator I had not told anybody about the perpetrator because he threatened to kill me and to kill everybody in the home. So as a young child, I was intimidated by that, and I didn't say anything. But I still felt like everybody knew this dirty secret that I had, and I was so ashamed. So I held my head down. I didn't really talk to people. And my grandmother did believe in getting an education. She believed, like most Americans, that if I send these children to school, I hope for the best. I hope that they might have a chance, a better life than me. So just by way of background, in my community at the time, we were going through the early stages of integration. And we were a couple of years in, and there were still a lot of high tensions going on in the community. And so some ladies in my West End community decided that they were going to get a grant and start a preschool program in the fellowship hall of a local church. So my grandmother found out about the program. It was free of charge. She couldn't have afforded to have provided me with any type of early childhood education, and she sent me down to that school. And I remember going to that school the first day like it was yesterday. I walked into the school, and as I told you, my demeanor, my head was hung, I didn't look up, but I kind of looked up around the room, and I kind of smiled because the room was made just for me. Early childhood educators get it. They get the environment that a young child will thrive in, all these height-appropriate workstations, little bitty desks just my size. I didn't have any of that at home. I didn't have anything that was educational or interactive for me as a child. So I kind of smiled a little bit. But when those preschool teachers came up to me and put their arm around me and said, "Come on in here, baby," I almost cried. Because for the first time in my little young life at that time, I felt a nurturing touch from an adult. I felt relevant. I felt like somebody cared about me. So when I hear people say, "Well, we don't take kids to raise them," well, you're just a lie, because you do. You have them more in their life than they'll be with anybody else for the rest of their life, unless they stay married for 60 years, but you know, how much does that happen today? But anyway, so these ladies took me in. They never said anything about my background. They never made me feel any less than any of the other kids in the room. In fact, you know what I learned? I learned that if you do smart stuff, these ladies will love on you. And I was starving for love and affection at that time, so I did smart stuff all the time. In fact, I did so much smart stuff that I ended up being valedictorian in my kindergarten class, and I wasn't even trying to be valedictorian in my kindergarten class. I was literally just responding to those teachers, that look in their face when you did something well, the way they put their arm around you and give you that affectionate touch to show that they were proud of you, because I was getting what most kids want to get at home, and that is affirmation. And I know that even better now because I have 2 teenage daughters and an 18-month-old son. I'm not kidding. 2 teenage daughters, 18-month-old son. So I'm learning this all over again. That's why I'm an advocate for pre-K. No, I'm just kidding. So I just thrive in this environment. And then let's fast forward. It's time to go to the first day of public school. To no offense to the folks in the white people in the room, but to meet white people, because I really wasn't around white people other than when my grandmother was cleaning houses. So that in and of itself was a bit of an anxiety moment for me. And that happens in a lot of our communities and neighborhoods across the country, that anxiety of going into a different culture of people that are now your figureheads. So I get up that morning and I put on my little new clothes and eat me some breakfast, and my grandmother looks at me and she says, "Elizabeth, I want you to go over to that school and I want you to tell the teacher to put an X everywhere I need to sign on the paperwork, send it back home, and I'll send it back tomorrow." So it dawned on me, my grandmother's about to send me to this school by myself. I was terrified, but I was more terrified of my grandma and what she might do if I talked back to her. So I got my little butt on the bus to head across town. And I'll never forget that ride on that bus because, you know, although my neighborhood was all of maybe 6 blocks wide, it was my neighborhood. It was where I lived. It was where I went to church. It was where I played. And to leave that was scary. So I get on the bus, and I remember as we were bouncing across the railroad tracks, I looked out the back of the bus, and I could see my little community behind me, and it scared me. And I remember as we drove down into the neighborhood that led to the school, it was a beautiful neighborhood, manicured lawns, multi-level houses, and it scared me even more. Why? Because it was different. It was different from what I was used to. So I walk into the door, and I don't know what to do. But I look on the wall, and I see first grade. Well, how did I know it said first grade? Because of that preschool. So I thought, well, I'm in the right place. I'm going to first grade. Well, then parents came in with their children, and they would scroll up and down the list, the homeroom list that were on the wall, and they say, oh, little Susie, you're in such and such room. So they would take them off into the module where they were supposed to go. And I thought to myself, well, my name's got to be up there. I'm going to the first grade. So I got on my little tippy toes, and I scrolled up and down that list until I found my name. And when I found my name, I saw what room I was supposed to go into. Well, how did I know how to read, write, and spell my name and how to navigate from classroom to classroom? Because of that preschool. So I go into my room and I sit in the front desk because the ladies at the preschool told me don't nothing good happen in the back of the classroom. When you go over to that school, you better sit your butt in the front desk. So I sat in that front desk and I did not move. I sat up straight, I was quiet, I did exactly as I had been taught in preschool. And I sat there what seemed like an eternity, but it really wasn't. But here, you know the scene. It's first day of school for everybody. We didn't have mandatory kindergarten at the time, so everybody's first day of school, red, white, black, rich, poor, everybody's nervous and lots of anxiety in the room. So finally, the teacher started to walk towards me. Now, I promise you guys, this lady looked just like Linda Carter, Wonder Woman. I am not kidding you. She had the dark hair, the beautiful eyes, the beautiful smile, and I was really fascinated by Wonder Woman because this was the mid-'70s. It was when the show was on syndication. I watched it all the time. I thought Wonder Woman was going to come and save me with her gold cuffs and her little robe from all the bad people. So as the lady's walking towards me, I'm sitting there in my little 6-year-old mind thinking to myself, could this be? Is my teacher Wonder Woman? Well, it wasn't Wonder Woman, it was Miss Pam Jones, but she was my Wonder Woman. Because let me tell you what happened. So she came up to me and with that beautiful smile and said, well, hello, young lady, what is your name? And y'all, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. What did I know about registering myself for school, right? So all I could say was, my name's Elizabeth Humphrey, and my grandmother told me to tell you to put an X everywhere she needs to sign on the paperwork and send it back home, and I'll bring it back tomorrow. It just came out. I just spit it out. And she stopped and she looked at me, and we had an exchange about how I'd found my way into the classroom and everything. And you all know that a lot of things could have happened in that moment. She could have called our Human Department of Child Services, and hey, fair. Love my grandmother, God rest her soul, but I should not have been at school by myself that day. Or in the busyness of what she had going on the first day of school, she could have said, this isn't my problem. You need to go to the office and let them deal with that. Or thirdly, she could have done the absolute worst thing that could have ever happened to me. She could have decided I was one of those children and put me in a category and never even acknowledged me, just stuck me somewhere in the classroom. But instead, now I have to say, I always acknowledge my faith. I believe that it was the power of God in that moment because I truly believe teaching is a ministry. What you all do every day impacts lives, and that's what God does. He impacts lives through people, and nobody does it more than those that affect the education system. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said to me, Elizabeth Humphrey, you're going to be the brightest student I ever have. You don't think you have power? You better think again. You got some of the most awesome God-given power I've ever seen in my life because it transformed my life. The ability to learn and have a refuge of a place to thrive in was life-changing for me. So you want to know why I care about early childhood education? Because I'm a product of it. Because I wouldn't be standing here today in front of you had it not existed. So it's my life's mission to make sure at least everybody in the state of Alabama, every 4-year-old, has an opportunity like I had to be in a high-quality classroom so that they can be ready for school. Because when a kid is ready, and you all know this as educators, you soak it up like a sponge. It is so awesome to have that kid that is sitting there ready, willing, and eager to learn. like I was. Now, I'll be honest, I really didn't understand what was going on at 6 years old when she got all in her feelings on me and everything. And I was thinking in my mind, well, I guess this is just like preschool. I'll just do smart stuff and she'll love on me. And that's exactly what I did. I did smart stuff, and she's still loving on me. In fact, when I gave birth to my second child, she was at my house keeping my first child. And when I gave birth to that little caboose surprise last December, she was the first person in the driveway. I think she was there just because she wanted to see it for herself. But I say to you all, I have written a book in tribute to all of the teachers in my life that did agree, I'm here to raise her. Not to take me into their home, but to do the best that I can by her while she's in my class, to give her a chance, to give her some tools that can help her for the rest of her life. And a portion of those proceeds obviously are going to the expansion of high-quality pre-K in our state of Alabama. I just want to thank you all for choosing this profession and for choosing this course of road, this ministry for your life, and just hope today that my story will remind you that you are game changers. You change the lives of children every day, whether it's through policy, whether it's through department heads, or whether it's directly at the touch of the classroom. So congratulations, all of you, Teachers of the Year and the National Teacher of the Year. I'm sure that you all are Wonder Women and Supermen. Thank you so much.